A massive explosion in the heart of the Lebanese capital. The blast sent shockwaves across Beirut, shattering windows, destroying buildings, and injuring hundreds. The streets were filled with panic and confusion. Rescue work began quickly. Emergency vehicles converged on the site of the blast, putting out fires and getting the injured to safety. Lebanon's internal security chief confirmed the blast originated in the port district, in a section housing highly explosive materials.
Virgin Australia will axe a third of its workforce as part of a relaunch under its new owners. Charles Crouch is following the story and joins us in the studio. Charles, just how many workers are we talking about?
A lot of workers, Davina, 3,000 in total. That is a third of the workforce, as you mentioned, of Virgin Australia. That means some 6,000 people will keep their jobs, albeit when aviation returns. And there is still a big question mark over when that will be. Virgin say they would like to see at least 2,000 of these jobs return in the future. That is when long-haul international flights are back up and running, and there is all of that doubt that is currently in the aviation industry gone. But for now, there is bad news for those 3,000 workers, and they're workers that Michael Caine from the union say have been with the aircraft and making the aircraft what it is.
In the midst of an ongoing strained relationship with India, Nepal has intensified its activities along the Indo-Nepal border. According to sources, Nepal has accelerated the work of building 200 new border outposts and 2 helipads on its side of the border. Nepal currently has 130 permanent border outposts, but is now engaged in strengthening these outposts and road networks along the border. Reports say Nepal is now planning to increase the number of these outposts to around 400 to 500. India's border patrol organization, the Sashastra Seema Bal, has 500 border outposts along the Indo-Nepal border.
The battle to unban the sale of tobacco products continues. British American Tobacco is challenging the ban in the Western Cape High Court. The organization insists the ban on cigarettes is not in the national interest and infringes on individual rights. But government maintains the ban is in place to curb the spread of COVID-19. Tobacco products have been banned since the beginning of the lockdown in March.
The Han River through Seoul overflowing its banks after days of torrential rain. An extreme weather system that straddled the central parts of the Korean peninsula for days is now being fed by a typhoon moving through neighbouring China. Mountainous regions in South Korea have suffered the worst damage from flash floods and mudslides. Those killed and missing were mostly caught in homes and buildings that were inundated.
If we get more rain, we'll have to evacuate. Our home might get swept away as well. It's tough. It's psychologically draining.
North Korea is also being affected, announcing the highest level of warning for some areas. It's expecting rainfall of up to 500 millimeters.
In Bolivia, the healthcare system there has been overwhelmed by the coronavirus pandemic. Most of the more than 80,000 infections are in the capital, La Paz, where hospitals, laboratories, and funeral homes are close to the verge of collapse. In just 5 days, police there collected more than 140 bodies from the streets.
In this car, a 68-year-old man has died as a result of COVID-19. He never made it to hospital. Just a few hours earlier, a friend and family members had tried to get him help at 5 medical centers, but they were denied. An officer hands over the death certificate since the coroner hasn't turned up. The officer says people aren't just dying in their cars, they're also dying on the street and at home. Hospitals are at breaking point, and it's becoming harder to access treatment.
Despite the coronavirus lockdown, supporters of former President Álvaro Uribe took to their cars, waving the national flag in defense of their political hero. After the country's Supreme Court ordered his detention and charged him of witness tampering and fraud in an investigation linking him to paramilitary groups. Tuesday's decision shocked Colombians, promising to further polarize the country over Uribe's legacy, who remains a senator and the most powerful and divisive politician in the nation. The court reached the decision after concluding there was potential for obstruction of justice.
Protests in Portland, Oregon were declared an unlawful assembly Monday night. It's been 3 days since the Trump administration agreed to reduce the presence of federal agents. And late Monday, protesters didn't hesitate to confront state troopers in the area, taking their place.
You're a push-up for being a woman and doing this.
Officers taking at least one handcuffed person into custody as tear gas erupted shortly after midnight. Here you see demonstrators burning the American flag over the weekend and setting a Bible on fire as they chanted profanities against President Trump. Protesters continue to meet at the courthouse, which they set on fire back on July 20th. As the city of Portland slashes the budget for police, Portland sees a record in homicides. The Portland Police Bureau is investigating 15 murders that occurred in July. With 24 homicides this year alone, last month accounts for more than half. There were 63 reported shootings for the month of July compared to 28 the same month last year.
Now, in China, the government is not only cracking down on Muslims, but on other religions as well as it pushes to assert communist ideology. Buddhist temples have been closed or demolished, while a campaign has been launched to destroy hundreds of statues of Buddha. The destruction of the giant Guanyin Buddha has drawn international condemnation, as we hear now from correspondent Matthias Böllinger.
Liu Ming is a devout Buddhist. Liu is not his real name, he's afraid of repercussions. In his hometown of Xi'an, Buddhists have come under pressure from the government since they started protesting against the destruction of a Buddhist site on the outskirts of the city. The three-faced statue of Guanyin, the deity of mercy in Chinese Buddhism, is being demolished.
Canadian researchers say they've identified the first confirmed case of advanced cancer in a dinosaur. The evidence comes from a broken fibula, a leg bone that once supported a Centrosaurus, a 2-ton plant-eating dinosaur that lived 76 to 77 million years ago and was discovered in Dinosaur Provincial Park in Alberta in 1989. Researchers always thought the bone was healing from a fracture, but findings published in the medical journal, The Lancet Oncology, revealed the dinosaur suffered from osteosarcoma, the same aggressive cancer that afflicted Terry Fox.
Osteosarcoma is what's called a primary malignant bone cancer. What that means, it's a primary bone cancer, meaning that it starts in the bone, and it's a malignant cancer, meaning that it can spread to other parts of the body